welcome everyone. It is an honor, it is a privilege, as usual, to be found in the presence of God, worshipping Him the way that He intended for us to worship Him. Amen? Alright, so how many of you can recall what we spoke about the last time? I'm going to have to speak up. I cannot hear.
John 5, relationship. The layman at the pool. Huh? What do you read? Isaiah 43.
I'm just trying to set up the projector. Are you guys can see me on the screen?
Yeah.
Everything?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Alright, so the projector's working, everyone can see me. Alright, so we want to talk about Moses. Remember the last one we had a casual night? We had a casual night on Friday last night.
Last week.
Last week Friday night, yeah.
Yes.
So what were we speaking about?
The Lord promises. Yes, when you passed through the waters, we were taken close to fire and we burnt.
We were speaking about that journey from Egypt, right?
Yeah.
And the things that God did and how He revealed them. He revealed Himself to them. And we drew some connections. And we said, it's a story that we know, but really, there's a lot of depth in there that
Yes.
we didn't get.
Yeah.
We didn't see. We looked at worship previously, the woman at the well, and how that, being believers, some of us for 20, 30 years, worship being such an essential part of your life as a believer. And yet, we also didn't understand that concept fully. What I'm trying to draw your attention to is the fact that along the different messages we've given, we've found or are finding that our understanding of certain fundamental concepts are wrong. And so we have to ask, why is this the case? How is it people can be reading the Bible for years and then come to the wrong conclusion? How is it that we have this book that is inerrant, this book that is from God, divinely inspired for us, and we can't grasp the truth? Why is this the case? Is it simply the fact that we don't pay attention when we read?
Yes. Because we also get this straight.
Or is it the fact that there's been influences for a large period of time, tiny little influences that have misdirected our path? I want to talk about a famous man today. Every time you say We're getting these new insights. We're getting these new. They're not new insights, right? They've always been there. We've just failed to see them. Now, it's something similar, but it's. I'm going to talk about somebody that is so pivotal to everything that we know. And we've mentioned his name a few times in the lead up to this message. We mentioned his name. He is mentioned all over the Bible. I think after the Messiah, he is the most important figure. You might think I'm talking about Paul, but it's not Paul. Paul has written quite a few books in the New Testament, but there's one who has shaped all of history. He has shaped all of history. I said apart from the Messiah. I'm talking about a man, pure flesh and blood. A man who in the eyes of other men rose to godhood. He was a god amongst men. Moses. I want to talk about Moses. Okay? I think apart from the Messiah, he is the most influential figure in the Bible. The fact that the Torah, the first 5 books, were penned by his hand. There's a whole community of people, Jewish people, who live and die by the words that he wrote. Okay, by the way, we're not available on Facebook. I'm not sure why. Facebook is conspiring against us, so we're only on YouTube. I will put this video's link up on Facebook so you can watch it. It won't be live, but it'll be there. So Moses, this guy, as I said, he rose to godhood. When people looked at him, they were afraid. He was like a god to men. In fact, Yahuah himself said to God, said to Moses himself, I will make you a god to men. He says, you will be to Aaron a god, as I am your God. And he will speak your words as you speak mine. So Moses was more like an intermediary to Aaron, and then Aaron was the prophet to the people. So Moses was a god to them. When the plagues happened, Moses just had to raise his hand or put forth his staff, say something, and these otherworldly cataclysmic events would happen. It was a huge display of power. It was a massive, massive display of power. Now, who was Moses? What happened? Okay, so I want to deal with a few things that occurred. I want to deal with a few things, and we're going to do some Bible gymnastics today. Okay? We're going to go to quite a few scriptures. But I'm going to say some words before I start on the character of Moses. Okay? The baby on the river. The prince of Egypt. An outcast. One who faced prejudice. One who was out of place. Anger. Murder. Exile. Nomad. Father. Son. Chosen. Fearful. Powerful. Success. Messiah. Let's face it. To them, he was a Messiah. Leader. Prophet. Provider. His dreams fulfilled. Anger. Forsaken. Rebelled against. On the brink of his fulfillment of his dreams, but to see them fail. cannot enter his dream. This man went through the complete panorama of emotions. In his life, he had experienced just about everything there was to experience, from the good and the bad. And we're going to go through some of those things, but I want you to keep those words in your head, like all these different things, because there's some things I want to ask. See, when we think of Israel in Egypt, because of influences over time, we think of how Israel used to fight with the lands around them. They would battle, they would be captured and taken prisoner into those lands. So we think, oh, Egypt, the Israelites in Egypt have been captured prisoners of war and they're under slavery as a result of that. Yes? That's what comes to our minds. When we talk about the children of God in Egypt, we think that they were taken in battle and forced to live in slavery. And I say to you, that is a result of influence over time. I want you to go back. Why were the children of Israel in Egypt? I'll tell you why. Egypt was supposed to have been destroyed. Egypt was going to face years and years of famine. Egypt would not exist. What happened? God was giving the Pharaoh of that time visions. Okay? And those visions he could not understand. He went to a prisoner. Okay, there was a prisoner in Egypt. He was sold there as a slave by his brothers. His name was Joseph. Joseph was a Hebrew boy. The jealousy of his brothers caused him to end up in prison eventually in Egypt because of Potiphar's wife. I want you to understand what is going on here. So, the Pharaoh was having these perturbing dreams, nightmares. Could not understand them. God was warning the Pharaoh, your country is about to be destroyed. So what happens? The guy that was in prison with Joseph remembered, hey, there's this guy who can discern dreams. So the Pharaoh calls Joseph. Joseph tells the Pharaoh what his dream was about. Okay? And then the Pharaoh makes Joseph his second in command because he was able to understand the dreams and also put into place the plans to be able to save enough to last them through that famine. So Egypt is saved by this Hebrew boy. This Hebrew boy is given like Pharaoh status in Egypt. He was a proxy for the Pharaoh. He makes peace with his brothers. Who are his brothers? Who are Joseph's brothers? The 12 tribes come from the 12 brothers of which Joseph is one. Now, who is Joseph's father? But Jacob is not Jacob. Jacob is, come on, people, Israel. So, think about this now. Because when you read Exodus and you're reading the story and it says Israel, 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 they are not the nation of Israel. They are the children of Israel, that's Jacob. They are in Egypt because they were called to Egypt to help Egypt. They were Egypt's saviors. So the old Pharaoh loved them and revered them. Now what had happened? You'll see if you go into Genesis chapter 15. I'm going to put the Bible up on screen now so you don't have to see my face. hardly up yet. I'm in top form today. So we're talking about how they landed up there. So Genesis chapter 50. Guys can see it? Okay, it'll come, it'll come. It will come, it will come. It will come. Now? Okay, cool. So, I'm trying to use a different method to get the video to the stream because the old plugin expired and it'll only give me like low res and you'll see I'll look like Minecraft. So I'm trying something that'll give you high definition. Right, so can you see Genesis 50 on the screen? Genesis 50, Genesis chapter 50, verse 15. Chapter 50, verse 15. So chapter 50, verse 15. Right, it says, and when Joseph is Joseph, remember my little version that I'm using has the original names, right? So when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was, who's their father? Israel. They said, Joseph, perchance is possibly, maybe, you know, so Joseph might hate us, you know, because Joseph loved his father and his father loved him, right? The whole problem with between the brothers was the favoritism that the father had for Joseph, the coat of many colors. We all know that story. Okay, so now he says, hey, dad died. This guy's going to hate us. He's going to think we did something. And will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. So he's going to pay. Dad's not here to protect us now. He's a big shot in Egypt. He's going to he's going to give us payback. He's going to have revenge on us now for what we did to him when he was younger. So they sent a message unto who? Wait. How is it written there? Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at my version. It says El Yosef. What? What is El? So his status was very high in Egypt. Right? Saying your father did command before he died, saying, now they lied to him, right? They're saying, so shall you say unto Joseph, forgive, I pray you now, the transgression of your brethren and their sin, for they did unto you evil. And now we pray you, forgive the transgressions of the of the servants of the Eloi of your fathers. They're saying we servants of God, right? And Joseph wept when they spoke unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we be your servants. So you remember the dream that Joseph had, that his brothers will be bowing to him? That's the moment. And Joseph said to them, fear not, for am I in the place of, am I God? I'm not God. Why are you bowing down to me? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant good. Elohim meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day. So what he's saying, everything happened for a reason. We are here where we are today because of everything that happened. See, Joseph could understand the working of God in his life. And then you see, he says, why? To save much people alive. Now, therefore, fear you not. I will nourish you and your little ones. I'll take care of you. He comforted them and spoke kindly unto them. Now, see that word Mitzrayim? That's Egypt. If you look at your English version there, what it says? Where did Joseph dwell? Right, so Mitzrayim is Egypt. Joseph dwelt in Egypt. he and his father's house, all his brothers, they all lived where? In Egypt. Then Joseph lived how long? 110 years. He saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. So he saw his son. He saw his son's children to the third generation. Look what it says. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, that's the third generation. That guy's children were brought up on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said unto his brethren, I die. And Elohim will surely visit you and bring what, look what he's saying now, right? Pay attention to this. Bring you out of this land unto the land which he swore 7 oaths unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the forefathers now. Direct. So that promise, Joseph can remember that was made to his father and his father's father and his father's father's father, great-grandfather. Right? That they will inherit this promised land. He has not forgotten that. He makes a declaration to his brothers, I'm going to die, but fear not. God's going to take you out of Egypt and put you in the promised land. And Joseph took 7 oaths of the children of Israel, saying, so children of Israel is, all these people are the direct grandchildren and children of Jacob. Not grandchildren, direct children. Jacob was their father. Joseph's brothers, Jacob's children. Right? So now, what he's saying, he took 7 oaths, saying, surely Elohim will visit you, God will visit you, and he will carry up my bones from here. He wants his bones to be buried in the promised land. Okay. Now, you see his father, Israel, he told him, you will take my bones and you will bury them in the land of Canaan. So he did that for his father after his father died. But he's telling his brothers, I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die now. God has revealed to me it's my time to die. But you're going to take my bones out of here. So Joseph, being 110 years old, died, right? And they embalmed him and he was put in a coffin where? In Egypt. But what was his thing? Right. So now you see this. You realize that was how the Egyptians or the Hebrew people ended up in Egypt. Joseph and his brothers stayed there. There's 12 brothers, including Joseph. So there's 12 families in Egypt. Now when you start Exodus 1, you get a little bit more information now. Right? It says, now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Mitzrayim. Every man in his household came with who? So it's all the children of Jacob. It's Reuben. You can see all the 12 tribes. You can see them there. Right? Now look at verse 8 of Exodus 1. There's a new Pharaoh, and he does not know about Joseph. He doesn't know what Joseph did. So over the period of time, it doesn't tell you how much time passed, but you can gauge, there's an understanding, right? Because the next verse 9, it tells you, he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. What has happened? The population, the children of Jacob and their children and their children's children, they just increased in population to the point where they were mightier than the Egyptians in Egypt. So when the Pharaoh saw that, he was afraid of being overtaken. His country would be overtaken by these Hebrews that came in. He doesn't know Joseph. He doesn't know what they did for Egypt. So he starts to try to do what is known as population dynamics. He tries to control the population of these people in Egypt. And he was heavy-handed and he did terrible things. Okay? There's some information you get when you look at the midwives, right? So from verse 15 onwards, in Exodus chapter 1, you'll see the king spoke to the midwives. He spoke to the medical community, those that deal with childbearing. And he said, when you have a Hebrew woman here, and she's giving birth, if she gives birth to a boy, kill it. If she gives birth to a girl, keep it. But these midwives did not do what he said. They let the children live. Now God blessed those midwives and gave them families because they were good to the Hebrew woman. That's all there. You can read it, right? We don't have the time to go through all the scriptures. But I'm giving you the baseline. And then Pharaoh got the military involved to say, we're going to kill every male child. This is the point in which Moses enters the picture. What I want to bring your attention to is a decree that the Pharaoh made. If you look at verse 22, he said to all the people, every son that is born, you will cast into the river. And every daughter you will save alive. Now, technically, Moses was cast into the river. But he was in a basket, right? But that was the word that I found it interesting, right? So now, we find that the Egyptians increased greatly. They became a threat, and now they are being oppressed. They're being suppressed. He's giving them hard labor, treating them like slaves. What can I say? Denying them of rights. Okay? And this new king, he did not know. He did not know what their purpose was there. He did not know why they were there. They were just now slaves. They were given hard labor. Things were made very difficult for them. In one of the verses, it tells you the Pharaoh's mindset. He says, if they're working hard, all the time they're tired, so they can't use their strength to rebel against us. This guy was crazy. Now, Moses, when you learn about Moses, when he comes onto the scene, you find out he's actually a descendant of Levi. Now, what do we know about the Levites? They are the priests. Okay? And God commanded that the priests, the Levites, must stay around the tabernacle. They must live close to God always. And Moses does that. Moses lives close to God. But how does he get there? Right? So I want to say a few things now in this period. Moses on the water. We know the story. The Pharaoh's daughter finds him, raises him as a prince in the house of the Pharaoh. He's a prince. But as he grows, he's thinking, I don't look like the rest of these people. My skin tone's different, my hair is different, my eyes are different. I don't look like these guys. And this is a palace, right? It's a pharaoh. The house of the pharaoh. He's a prince. Okay? But there's other princes, princesses, other royal people. Can you imagine the kind of things that would have been said? They would have called him an illegitimate child. They would have questioned how he got there. Why do you look so different? He would have been alienated. He would have been dealing with a lot of stuff. Growing up in this place where he's not like everyone else. Yes, there's riches. Yes, there's opulence. Also, he was brought up by his mother, his real biological mother. She was his nanny. So who's to say his mother didn't sing the old Hebrew lullabies? All of those things would be in the back of his head. He would have known, I am not like these guys. What would the Pharaoh's son have done when they were together? Because the Pharaoh's son is the one who's going to be the next Pharaoh. What would those discourses as two young men growing up would have been? When the Pharaoh's son says, you don't look like an Egyptian. So Moses may have faced a lot of internal struggle growing up. There would have been a lot of rage boiling up inside this young man. When we look at Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, what do we see? When he was grown, that he went out unto his brethren. Who's his brethren? And looked upon their burdens. So his brethren have burdens. He knows this is my kind. These are my brethren. But these Egyptians are oppressing them. He looked at their burdens. He spied a Egyptian hitting a Hebrew person, one of his brethren. So look at how many times he's telling you he knows that they are his brethren. Look at verse 12. He looked this way and that. Why? He knows what he's about to do is wrong. He don't want anyone to see. When he saw there was no man, what did he do? He killed the man. He committed murder. Now, one of the problems with Moses and what happened with Moses is he grew up without the word of God. Every other Hebrew child gets the word of God taught to them all the time. They speak it, right? There were no books of the Bible at this time, but they spoke it as they were commanded to. Teach your children. They had songs and poems that the law of the Lord, you would take it into your heart. This was the original purpose for the law, that you engrave it on your heart. Moses didn't have that. He grew up without the word. He grew up without the commandments. He just saw this guy doing the wrong thing, felt an extreme sense of injustice, and he murdered the guy. It's wrong. But he does not have those 10 commandments to say, this is what's right, this one. In fact, did the 10 commandments exist at that time? No. It didn't. We'll get to that. So he killed this guy. It's still wrong. He knows the Egyptians are going to be angry about him killing the Egyptian guy. So he runs. He's a coward. Doesn't stand and face accountability for his actions. He runs. He's an exile. He's a fugitive. He's afraid that if the Pharaoh catches him, he's going to kill him. Okay, now if you look initially, he stays around, but somebody else says, so if you look at verse 13, he went out on the second day. Behold, two of the men of the Hebrews strove together. So two Hebrews were fighting, and he said to him, the one that did wrong, why are you smiting your fellow? And he said, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So now Moses is afraid because he says, okay, this thing is out. People know that I did this. Now he runs. Verse 15, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses what? From the face of? And dwelt in the land. Now here's the thing. When he dwells in this land, it talks about a priest that finds him. Who is this priest that finds him? Jethro. Right? He is the priest in Midian. And Jethro has 7 daughters. Right? So Jethro has 7 daughters. When Moses meets them, he helps them because some other nomad tribe who are, donkey keepers or sheep keepers, one of the two, they want to fight with these daughters. And Moses saves them, helps them to ward off these guys. So, what happens is, they go back to the father and they say, there's this guy who helped us. And he says, let him come in and have a meal. And then Moses was happy to stay with them. And he stays for a period. And Jethro gives him the hand of one of his daughters, Zipporah. Now it is whilst Moses is there with Jethro in the desert areas, he sees the thing. He sees a light on the mountain. No one is allowed to go on this mountain because this mountain is holy. Right? Jethro is a priest. He knows the mountain is holy and no one's supposed to go on the mountain. But he sees this light. He goes to investigate this light. When he approaches this light, what does he find? A bush that is burning but not consumed. And God speaks to him out of this bush. God reveals himself to Moses. And God sets out a plan for Moses. But what you'll find is, before all of this, in Exodus 2:22, he had a son named Gershom. And remember what I said about Moses not being brought up with the law? So Gershom was uncircumcised. That is important. And if you go to Exodus chapter 2, verse 24, you're going to see something. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are the words of Joseph echoing. God made a promise. He's going to take our people out of this land to the promised land. And God is hearing the cries of his people because of the bondage of Egypt. God looked upon the children of Israel and God had respect unto them. God remembers. Then if you go to Exodus chapter 10, I'm skipping quite a bit, all those plagues. We know about all the different plagues, right? Because God sets in plan this motion of how I'm going to free my people from Egypt. We know what happens, right? We know that, as I was saying, Moses becomes like a god. Initially, he is apprehensive. He says, I can't speak. Let Aaron speak. How can I do this? But then God tells him, I've chosen you. You're going to do this. Right? I've revealed myself to you. You're my prophet. And on it goes. We know about the plagues that torment the Pharaoh. We know about Pharaoh hardening his heart. We know that God says God hardened the Pharaoh's heart. This was always a sticking point with me. I never could get it. I never could understand, why did God have to do that? Right, so in Exodus chapter 10 verse 1 it says, and Yahuah said unto Moshe, which is Moses, go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. Why? I might show these signs, these my signs before them. You see, the Egyptians believed they were all powerful. They believed their gods were most powerful. And they believed they would conquer the earth because of the power of their gods. And so God had to show them what is real power. Who am I compared to what you think God is? So God explains himself in Exodus chapter 10 verse 1. Why I did all this. I might show these my signs before them, the Pharaoh and his servants. They need to understand, I am God. If you look at the next verse, why does he show these signs? That you may tell in the years of your son and your son's son. So now he's speaking to Moses. He's saying, your son and your son's son, you're going to tell them all these marvelous things that I, the Lord your God, have done in Egypt. So that you will know I am the true God. Then we know the final straw that broke the camel's back was the Passover. But there's something I want to pick on in the Passover. When you go to Exodus chapter 12, the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying what? This month shall be unto you as the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household is too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to him use one lamb, basically, according to the number of souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel will kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door of the house, doorpost of the house, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast it with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs you will eat it. Do not eat it raw or sodden with water. Roast it with fire, the head with the legs and the purtenance thereof, and you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. And that which remains, you must burn it. And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, with shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. When the Passover was instituted, you're not supposed to be relaxing and eating this thing. You know what I mean? What is happening is God is taking life for your life. It's not a nice thing. It's not a thing that God wanted to do. It's a thing that God had to do. It's a thing that you have to bear reverence. Gird your loins. Don't take your shoes off. Have your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. Death is coming. You're doing this to save yourself from death. Now he says, even if a stranger is with you, 12:48. Even if a stranger is with you, he will keep the Passover to the Lord. Let all his males be circumcised. Then let him come near and keep it. He shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised people shall eat thereof. Moses said unto Aaron, take a pot. So if you look at Exodus 16:33, this is talking about when they're on the way out now. They're going through the wilderness. They're complaining that they don't have food. God provides manna to fall from the sky miraculously that they may eat. Okay? Now, in Exodus chapter 16:33, what do you find? Someone read it for me. An omer. That's how your Bible puts it, right? Look at 16:36. Ephah. It's 1/10 of an ephah. Why is here in Genesis a container? Like it's a measurement, right? So an omer is a measurement and an ephah is a measurement. But they're saying it's symbolic, right? That of all the manna you got, you're putting 1/10 for God. Where are we here? Which book? Which book of the Bible? You understand? So it's not Malachi. It's not later on. Now, I don't preach about tithes and offering. What are they giving us tithe here? Remember, they're in the wilderness. They're receiving from God manna. And they're giving back 10%. We're not preaching about that you ought to give or you shouldn't give. My whole thing is, you know the Word of God. You give according to what you can give. Because if you say, this is your tithes, you have to pay me this tithes, and the person is not in a position to give money to you, and no. So follow with me. They're not in a position, but because they believe they want to be right with God, right? They're going to give you this 10%, right? But they're giving it begrudgingly. Is that person doing good or bad for themselves? Is they're going to get a blessing for that or a curse for that? So you or me as a minister, I will not do that. I will not ask somebody to curse themselves. These people gave willingly because God was giving to them. Here you find the real values in the original application. But the church has turned this into something entirely different. Now, in verse 18, Exodus 18:11, what do we find?
Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, who is still wearing a belt, traveling in a savannah.
Who is speaking? Jethro,
Oh yes,
Moses' father-in-law. Who is he speaking about? The Egyptians. He's saying, the Lord brought you out of Egypt. Now I know that God is all-powerful. Because he was, that in the thing that the Egyptians were most proud of, he defeated them.
yeah, they won.
You understand why God had to do all the things he did?
Yes,
So even the people around Egypt know
yes,
that he is God.
he is sovereign.
There's another interesting part, right? So if you go to, we can read from 13, right? 18:13. It came to pass that Jethro came and he saw that Moses was judging the people, right?
Yeah,
And he says, what are you doing? He says, well, all these people have a problem. I am the messenger of God, so I need to judge between them and help them. So Jethro says, look, that's going to kill you. You can't sustain that. And Jethro says, what you should do is appoint people, so all the small matters they can deal with. So some for tens, some for hundreds, some for thousands, and only the large matters they can bring to you and you can deal with it. But appoint people who are godly. So if you read chapter 18 from 13 onwards, he says that, right? So Jethro tells him, this thing that you're doing is not good. If you look, you'll find that in 18:17. 18:18 says, you will surely wear away. This thing is too heavy. You are not able to perform it yourself alone. How many churches you find the one-man band?
yes,
They're performing it alone. What are we finding as a concept in Exodus? You can't do it as a one-man band. Even Moses couldn't do it as a one-man band. Verse 19, he says, hearken now unto my voice. I will give you counsel, and who will be with you? Elohim. Right? So Jethro is not saying it for his own benefit. He's saying, this is what God is saying you should do. Verse 20, you shall teach them ordinances and Torah, and shall show them the way they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, you must provide out of all the people what? Able men who, such as fear Elohim, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such men over the people. Now he's saying, subdivide. I have a person that's in charge of 10, and then 10 people that are in charge of 10. You have a person that's in charge of hundreds over that guy. And 10 of those, you have a person that's in charge of those, that's 1,000. So you have what is management. The concept of management built into the Bible. How do you deal with the people? You have a small group. You have one person in charge of that small group. Then you have a small group of people who are in charge of a small group that are reporting to someone in charge of them, and so on and so forth. So that the information can be, the required information can be funneled to you. So, in verse 24, you see, Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Okay, so verse 26, you see, they judged the people all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses. Every small matter they judged themselves. And then in 27, you see Moses let his father depart and he went his own way. Now, if you go to 19, verse 19, chapter 19, verse 3. You see that God called him? God called him from where? From the mountain. Saying, this you will say to the house of Jacob and the children of Israel. See, he's mentioning Jacob. And so what he's talking about the children of Israel, the man. Right? You have seen what I did unto Egypt, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and guard my covenant, you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. For what? All people are God's. The whole earth. But you will become my special people, right? By doing the things I ask you to do. Guarding my covenant. Guarding my word. Obeying my voice. The whole world, all the people on the planet are God's. But God holds dear those who do His will. Do you understand this concept being shown to you? What does 19:6 say? You shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the what? The what? Words which you will speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that God said we'll do, Yahuah, right? And Moshe returned the words of the people and said unto El Yahuah. So let me just put 19 on the screen. I come unto you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak to you. See how God is intentional? He's coming to Moses as a visible cloud, speaking to Moses so that the people can see and know. He did the signs in Egypt so that the neighboring nations can see and know. He's so intentional about every step of the process. Okay? Now what does he say? And Yahuah said unto Moses, go unto the people and what? Sanctify. Today and tomorrow let them wash their clothes and be what? Ready against the third day. For the third day, what? So it's not just Moses who got to see God. Then, what it says, and you shall set bounds unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourself that you go not up into the mount, nor touch the border of it. Whosoever what? Touches the mount shall be. Don't even touch the mountain. He calls Moses up, but everybody else, you step foot on that mountain, you die. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. You understand? Not even animals. When the shofar sounds long, they shall come up to the mount. So God was going to make a provision. You can say you can sound the shofar and they can come up. The people can come up the mountain. Right? Watch this. Moshe went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes, and he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not at your woman. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the shofar exceeding loud, so that the people was in the camp. What they did? And Moshe brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with. Who's meeting with God? They stood at the nether part of the mount, and Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. When the voice of the shofar sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by a voice which everyone heard. Not just Moses. So no one could dispute that God verbally spoke to Moses. And Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai, on top of the mount, and Yahuwah called Moshe up to the top of the mount, and Moshe went up. So Moses went up the mountain. Everyone was at the foot of the mountain. They witnessed God, they heard God speak to Moses, and then God calls Moses up to the top of the mountain, and everybody heard him do it. Then Yahuwah said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto El Yahuwah to gaze, and many of them perish. So, you can't just look on God, right? You'll die. Your physical form cannot hold the glory of God. So he sends Moses back down to say to the people, don't come up the mountain to look. You will die. Let the priests also which come near unto El Yahuwah sanctify themselves, lest Yahuwah break forth upon them. And Moshe said unto El Yahuwah, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you charged us, saying, set bounds about the mount and sanctify it. He said, they won't come, because you told us. And Yahuwah said unto them, away, get you down, and you shall come up, and Aaron with you. But let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto him, lest he break forth upon them. So Moses went down to the people to speak to them again. He was trying to argue with God. You already told us they're not going to break your word. He had so much confidence that the people is going to listen to what he told them. God was saying, you don't know these people, go down. Now in 20 verse 1, chapter 20 is what? The famous chapter, where you get the 10 commandments, right? 20 verse 1, 20 is when God is dispensing the 10 commandments. So if you look at verse 1, what does it say? God is speaking. Who is he speaking to? Moses. He's speaking to Moses. Where is this happening? On the top of the mountain. God is dictating. I'm not going to deal with this 10 commandments. I'm just telling you what is happening here. So Moses is at the top of Mount Sinai. God is saying, this is my law. And whilst God is giving all this, if you look at 22 to 26, he says, thus shall you say unto the children of Israel, you have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make me Eloi of silver, neither make unto you Eloi of gold. So don't make any gods of silver, don't make any gods of gold, you make an altar of earth unto me. And you'll sacrifice thereon your smoke offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and oxen, all in the places where I record my name. I will come unto you, and I will bless you. In the places where I record my name. 90% of the churches don't even use the name of God. What offering can be placed there? What is he talking about here? Where you can place your offerings. Where you can offer your worship. Only in the place where he records his name. If you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone. For if you lift up your tool upon it, you have polluted it. You must build me an altar with stones from the ground, which I have made, not bricks that you have made. Think about it. Neither shall you go up by steps to my altar, that your nakedness be not discovered thereon. Think about it. If you got people sitting behind you and you're walking up the steps to God, God is considerate. Man is not. So I wanted you to understand, right, that is what's happening there. Now, I want to talk about this. There's something I need to talk about. We've been so conditioned. Okay? When he comes down with the tablets, in your mind's eye, when you think of Moses coming down the mountain with the 10 Commandments, I bet almost 100% of you are seeing two miniature tombstone gray stones. Yeah, what do they look like? So you think of these gray stone arch-shaped tablets of stone. That's generally the consensus. Huh? You know how we know that God intended that his word be kept forever? He didn't write it on stone like rock. He wrote it on sapphire. He wrote it on sapphire. Those were the stones that he used. You don't believe me? Okay. When he came down and he broke the first set, when he came down and he broke the first set, I'm getting there, don't rush. He actually broke 2 tablets of sapphire. It is incredible. When I learned this, I was like, my God, you are so definite in the things that you do. You're so intentional. He's just amazing. So I obviously learned of it because I read this version of mine, right? But there's some other stuff now. I've lost it, unfortunately. But there's references to why sapphire. That's what I wanted to impress upon you. But if you go to 24, chapter 24 of Exodus. Yeah. They saw God. So it's Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders. They saw God. Did you know that? All these people saw God. Read verse 10, 24:10. Read it. What does it say? And what was under his feet? So they saw God, and they saw God standing, and what he was standing on was sapphire. The whole paving in the place where God is sapphire. But 70 odd elders all saw God. That's the first inkling you get there, right? Go to 24:12. What does it say?
And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me unto the mount, and be there, and I will give thee
What will I give thee?
the tablets of stone,
What stone?
sapphire,
Yeah, and then what stone? What's his tablets for? The sapphire tablets.
the law,
To write the 10 Commandments on. So what was that written on?
sapphire stone.
It's fine. It is small tablets, right? You can say table, it's fine. Then your version is incorrect. Look, I shall show you. I shall show you. I shall show you. Are you looking at the screen? You can't see the screen. Why you can't see the screen?
You can see the screen, but the writing is blurred.
Okay, let me help you. What is going on? Okay, it's too small for you. Can you see it now? Right, so what is this here? I will give you
Sapphire stone. But you don't have it.
So let's see Bible basic English. I'll give you the stones. Okay. English Standard Version. Tablets of stone. King James Version. Tables of stone. Oh. Hebrew Old Testament. Not there. You can see this one. Okay, wait now. Hold on, hold on. So that's God's name. I'll recognize that anywhere. I'm not so sharp with understanding these Hebrew symbols. Check Nathan. The Hebrew word is Nathan, yeah. So this here is luak. Right? So it's polished. It means to shine. Right? So whatever the stone is, it's a polished, shining stone. I'm trying to find the sapphire. But in any case, so in your Et Sefer, which has the Hebrew, it's the Hebrew roots. It's all original. That is why I said I read this and then I see this and I'm like, whoa. Can you imagine that? And what is worse, he breaks this. He breaks it. He throws it on the ground and he breaks it. But interestingly, what is the properties? And then it got me thinking, wait, if this is solid sapphire, how did it break? But the properties of sapphire, if it were in a tablet form, it is highly resistant to getting worn, weathered, or scratched, altered. The text can't be altered. And it will endure. But it's very vulnerable to stress fracturing. So if he threw it on the floor, it would shatter. And that was like so amazing. And the color of it was blue. And that led me to thinking, well, that is why that tassel robe is blue. To remind you of the word of God that was written on blue stone. Because when they speak of that tassel robe, they say, you'll have this tassel robe and it'll remind you of my commandments. And we don't understand why it says that. But it says that because the 10 commandments were actually written on blue stones. How incredible. And then when he needs to build the second one, because they broke the first one, God tells him to go and cut out sapphire, go and haul that rock out of the mountain and bring it up. Carry these 2 stones of sapphire up the mountain, and then I will rewrite the law on them for you. Imagine. That is the penance Moses paid for his anger for breaking the law. Breaking the tablets that the law was written on. How many of you knew that? Other people saw God. The stone that it was written on was actually sapphire. They weren't really slaves in the land. They were called into Egypt to help them prepare. Now, another important thing. I want you to go to Exodus 32. This is after they did the nonsense now, right? What does he say? What does God say? 32, 33. People say this is not possible.
And the Lord said unto Moses, whoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book.
What book?
The book of life.
Whoever has sinned against me, him I will block out of my book. And they tell you, no, God doesn't do that. God won't do that. We have evidence.
That God said it.
Look at what Moses was trying to argue for the people, right? Look at what he says in the verse before that. What does he say?
If now if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not blot me, I take thee out of thy book which thou hast written.
So he's saying, forgive their sins, and if you can't forgive them,
Yeah.
take me instead.
Yeah. He was bullying us.
So how bad were they? What were they doing? Let's see your Bible, how good it is, right? So we know they built this cow, this calf, all that, right? So if we read from 21, okay, read from 20. Okay, no, wait. Read from 19. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp and he saw the calf and the dancing,
Yeah.
right? Moses' anger waxed hot. He cast the what?
Tablets of the
Your Bible says tablets. What does it say here?
sapphire.
He cast the sapphires out of his hands and broke them beneath the mount. He took the calf which they had made, burnt it in the fire, ground it to powder, strewed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink it. And Moses said unto Aaron, what did this people unto you, that you have brought so great a sin upon them? Aaron said, let not the anger of my Adonai wax hot. You know these people, they are set on mischief. For they said to me, let us make Elohim, which shall go before us. For as this Moshe, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we know not what has become of him. Because God was sitting and dictating to him, and telling him everything, writing it on the sapphires. That took 40 days and 40 nights. In that time, they thought, this guy is dead. Because this God came with like fire and thunder and whatever. Moses is dead. So we're making this God to replace, not God. They're not trying to replace God. They're making this God to replace who? Moses. Did you catch it?
Yeah.
Look what it says here. For they said to me, let us make Elohim, which shall go before us, for what?
As Moses.
As this Moses.
Yeah.
Now you understand that Moses was like a god to them?
Yes.
And I said unto them, whosoever has any gold, let them break it off. So they gave it me. And I cast it into the fire, and there came out the calf. Now, Aaron is trying to say, he threw all the gold in the fire, and out popped this calf. So when Moses saw that the people were what? Why?
Aaron made them naked unto the enemy.
So they were singing and dancing around this calf.
Naked.
Come on, people.
Everyone, come on.
They were performing pagan worship. Now look how angry Moses got. What did he say to them?
Who is on the Lord's side?
Right? Who is on Yahuwah's side? Let him come to me. All the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. You see, the Levites, the priests, always stay close to God. Then he said unto them, thus says Yahuwah, Eloi of Israel, put every man his sword by his side. Now they're naked, right? He said, take your swords. Go and in and out from the gate to the gate throughout the camp. So out one gate, in another gate, out one gate, in another gate, separate. What does he say? Slay your brother, your companion, and every man his neighbor. Kill each other. And then what? Now, I want you to understand, God hates pagan worship. You bring pagan ways into the church, God don't like it. He hates it. There's a word that God uses when he sees these things. He calls it abomination. And he will blot your name out of the book. If you go to Exodus 34 verse 1. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, what? Hew you 2 sapphire stones like unto the first, and I will write upon these sapphires the words that were in the first sapphires which you broke. In other words, your responsibility. Who told you to break them? You now go and you mind these things, bring it up the mountain, and I will rewrite it for you. This God is a God of accountability. And verse 3, let's go. Verse 2. Be ready in the morning. You need to be on top of the mountain in the morning with these stones that you've hewn out of the mountain. You think God made it easy for Moses? He makes it worse. Look at verse 3. No man shall come up with you. So no one can carry the tablets for you. You must come yourself. Not even help you halfway. Because he says, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount. Verse 4, and he hewed 2 sapphire stones like unto the first. He rose up very early in the morning. He went to Sinai as God had commanded him, and he took the 2 sapphire stones by his hand. Then Yahuwah descended in the cloud and stood with him there. Hello? Stood with him there. What does that imply? It's not strange. It's not strange. Because his forefather, Jacob, stood with God to wrestle with him. And then, what happens? He proclaimed the name of Yahuwah. Then Yahuwah passes before him and proclaimed, Yahuwah, Yahuwah El, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundance in goodness and truth. Now, you might find it strange, but it's not strange. Okay? Yahuwah descends, and Yahuwah proclaims the name of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah passes before him, and Yahuwah is proclaiming Yahuwah, Yahuwah El. What did I say to you? Anytime anyone ever saw God, they did not see God. So physically, the physical presence of God is Yahusha. So that's who Moses was standing with. Are you with me? Now, for all those people who says the law is a curse, the law is a ministry of death, I want you to look at 34:7. See, what is God saying? Yahuwah El, merciful gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth. And then 7, keeping what? Mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, upon third and fourth generation. He's saying both sides of the coin. Those who deserve it, they're going to get what's due. Those who need forgiving, God is forgiving. Who's keeping mercy? Who's forgiving? And Moshe made haste, bowed his head towards the earth, and worshipped. And then he says, if now I have found grace in your sight, O Adonai, let my Adonai, I pray you, go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your inheritance. See, Moses understands right there, right then, that God is capable of forgiving. God is capable of mercy. He stood face to face with the Messiah in the Old Testament who declared, this is mercy. I am mercy. We have people who think that the law is not. Listen, the only reason you have mercy and redemption is because of the law. Now people say, how can you say that? It's not true. It is true. Because what does John tell us? In the beginning was the Word was, and the Word was with God. And then further down, what does it say? Word became and dwelt amongst men. So who is this Word? So the Torah, the commands, the words of God is the Word in the Old Testament, but the Word is Christ. And Christ is the Word made flesh who comes to do what? And redeem you. So the Word is your Redeemer. Think about what I'm saying. The Word is mercy. The law is the Word is mercy. It doesn't take a rocket science or a genius to figure that out. It's been great. It's been lovely chatting. That's going to be it for this week. There's a lot more in the life of Moses. A hell of a lot more. Including the most interesting end to the story. But we'll get there next week. Shalom.